Okay, so I'm going to invite my fabulous panelists on stage. They're my friends, but also the best nutritionists in the city. Um, Kavita, Kavita Devgan is a celebrated nutritionist, holistic health consultant, author with over 25 years of experience in the wellness space, and she's known for her practical and customized approach to weight management. And she has been actually working on me for the past 3 weeks, and the results have been phenomenal. Welcome, Kavita. Anjali, my dear friend. So Anjali is a pioneer in functional medicine in India, offering a dynamic root cause approach to treating chronic lifestyle diseases. With a medical background in internal medicine and specialized training in obesity, metabolic medicine and functional medicine, she's going to educate us on how we can be more fit and fabulous, right? Okay, come. Close to each other. So, Anjali, I'm going to start with you. As a functional medical medicine specialist, how do you define holistic wellness? And does nutrition fit into the broader spectrum of wellness?
See, nutrition is a part of our daily lives. So, whatever we eat, what we are today. So, I switched the career from internal medicine to this because 70% to 80% of what we are is defined by what we eat, how we live, how we breathe, what we think. So, functional medicine per se is like we want to go to the root cause of why you're gaining weight, why you're having diabetes, why you're having vitiligo, why you're having acne, PCOD. So, going to root cause is what my main focus is, and then treating that, and then everything else falls in place.
So, how do you think a person can add? I mean, when they come to you, what is the routine that you follow to actually get them on the right path?
So first, I take a very long history of anybody. I believe in taking past medical history, family history, any medication, supplements that they're having, and then a lot of blood work. I get them done, and then after the blood work, I can figure out like, okay, where are we missing the information, and then it's very easy to treat when we find the reason.
Yeah. So, like everybody has been emphasizing over and over again that one size does not fit all. So, it has to be totally personalized. So, Kavita, you tell me, you have always emphasized the importance of not ditching the Indian diet. The regular myth is that Indian food is heavy and makes you put on weight with all the curries. But you completely say that's not true. So, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I am a very old school nutritionist, you know that as a personal experience. So I believe in the cliche old is gold. The problem is not with the old, but what we make out of it. You know, it's not the diet which is the problem, what you're mentioning, but it is how we actually have it today. The kind of food we eat today and we call Indian traditional diet, I do not think even our grandmothers would recognize that as food, frankly. So butter chicken is not traditional Indian diet. You know, we have to be very clear about what we are calling traditional diet. So if we are talking about traditional diet, those are that is based on very basic rules, the tenets, you know. Those are the ones that I believe we should not let go. I'm not saying eat exactly the kind of dishes that were being eaten by your grandmother, but I'm saying follow the rules she was following. So if you do that, you will not really ever have trouble. For example, if we talk about the simple basic rules like why would they eat their roti always with a little bit of ghee on top? So now today science has proven very clearly that it brings down the glycemic index. Similarly, why would they always have water first thing in the morning? Because we get up dehydrated, and I don't think they were aware of any researchers. They were only going by common sense. So all those time-tested, proven rules of traditional eating is what we need to bring back in our diet today. And if we do that, for another very simple thing, we keep talking about, trying to cut the harmful effects of pollution and boosting our immunity, and we've made it into like a huge, complicated thing. I have a book, literally a book on immunity, the immunity diet. But what would they do? They used to have raw onions and green chilies with every meal. It's basic. So science today has proven that these two things, when eaten raw, gives you enough antioxidants to help you face that day. So these old rules, we just need to revisit them and bring them back in our diet, and they can actually take care of a lot of things. They can be a preventive, they're not a curative thing, but they can be a big preventive way to start eating. And also why I believe in Indian diet is because I believe that we are all hardwired. What we eat, how it's going to affect us is very dependent on the genes we are carrying. Why is it that coconut oil suits some people and mustard oil suits the others? So how we are made also has a calling on what will work for us. So if we can keep the broad guidelines of the traditional diet and structure our today's eating basis those rules, we will not go wrong. I mean, that's why I believe in it very strongly.
So, of course, the latest trend these days, and everybody seems to be wanting to follow it, is intermittent fasting. What are your views on that?
So intermittent fasting is just a very fancy name given to something that, again, people have been practicing for ages now. Intermittent fasting in today's modern definition also has many forms. And earlier also the fasting, which was being done forever, had many forms. Some people would fast once a week. Some people would do, no water, kind of fast. And earlier it was given a religious connotation, always. So Tuesday, if you believe in Hanumanji, you do a fast on Tuesday. If you believe in Sai Baba, you do a fast on Thursday. So I personally believe that if religion can make you fast, there is no harm with that at all. It's not that Hanumanji will become happy because you fast on Tuesday, but it's just a way of making masses follow a certain practice. So fasting has always been a part of the way we've eaten and, lived. I would say eating is just one part of the way we live. So intermittent fasting today, I'm okay with it. I like the idea, but it's not a magic pill for what it is being touted. It's not a weight loss pill. So it can help cut inflammation because, it helps give a break to your system, your digestion. It can help your body get rid of the toxins in the non-eating window. But if you try to overuse it and if you try to use it for the wrong purpose, that you want to lose 5 kilos before you go for the next vacation, then it is not going to work at all. And there are multiple types of intermittent fasting. Again, people love extremes. So the one meal window, what they've subjected intermittent fasting to, I'm totally against that. But the 12 hours thing that we used to do always earlier, eat for 12 hours and not eat for 12 hours. If you follow that consistently for 365 days a year, eat by sunset and eat next when the sun is up, that is automatic intermittent fasting. So if you do that forever, you'll never go wrong. You would not need to do detoxes and you would not need to do 16-8 kind of a thing. But even if you want to do it, it should be done in the right way. And you need to eat in the right window. There are people who eat when they start eating at 2 or 4 and they eat till night. That doesn't work. You need to eat when your digestive fires are working. So if you want to do intermittent fasting, even if you want to do 16-8, eat in the first half of the day. So there are rules to it, and then it helps.
So you just talked about inflammation in the body, and I think Vidya Balan's weight loss has suddenly made inflammation in the body a very big thing. So tell me, Anjali, what exactly is the meaning of inflammation in the body and how does it help with weight loss?
So when we talk about inflammation, it's mostly talking about the gut health. And the gut lining is the biggest absorptive part of your body, and then comes skin. So if your gut lining is injured due to whatever reasons, can be stress, antibiotics, can be a bad lifestyle, whatever. So that inflammation, that damage of the lining causes our gut to reabsorb the stuff that was actually supposed to go in your poop. So we reabsorb it, and that's when the inflammation increases, because you've actually taken in toxins. And inflammation causes can also be from environment, can also be from the plastic use, and bad food, sugar. These are also inflammatory things. But gut is the main place where the detox happens, gut and liver. And that is where inflammation is. So if somebody is trying to lose weight and they can't lose weight, this is mainly because the gut inflammation is so high that they are reabsorbing all the toxins. They're not able to detox their body, and a lot of people walk around with constipation all the time. They're not able to excrete. And once you don't excrete, so you're not excreting while poop sometimes, and you're not sweating enough, so you don't have you're not expelling toxins. That's when the toxin buildup is called inflammation, and gut is the main area.
And how does diet affect skin? We've all talked about diet being a very critical part. How does it affect the skin?
I think diet has everything to do with the skin. In medical college, they used to teach us there's nothing to do with acne. Diet has zero relation to acne. I remember still a MCQ question had come to me that is diet related to acne? And that time we were taught that it wasn't. But now we see that you eat a piece of chocolate, and if you are somebody prone to acne, next morning you'll have a zit. And dairy is one that causes a lot of acne to people. And it really, diet is, I think, directly proportional to how your skin will look. You drink lots of water, you eat lots of greens, vegetables, antioxidants, colorful food, and then your skin glows. And I think there is no bigger proof.
And since morning we've been talking about sleep. So tell me, how does diet impact sleep?
So like you are what you eat, literally. So every aspect, whether it's your gut, the skin, your hair, I mean, every single thing is affected by every single bite. Every bite you're taking is changing something. Which is why I tell people, every time you take a bite, I mean, don't get obsessed about it, but you must know basically that that bite is going to do something. So if you're going to have a good bite, it's going to do something good inside. If you're going to have a bad bite, it's going to do something bad inside. So your sleep gets affected by a whole lot of things, of course. I mean, it's it's oversimplifying if I'm saying that it's just affected by what you eat. But if you are having sleep troubles, then if you overhaul your diet, it is very easy to help the person get out of that sleep problem. So there are foods which are called sleeper foods.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you.
There are foods which perk you up. So you have to structure the diet in a way wherein we include the sleeper foods in the second half of the day.
What are these
Like
sleeper foods?
I have a very simple ritual with most of my clients, even if they don't have a sleep issue, because sometimes what happens is you don't really realize whether you have a sleep issue or not, because your quality might not be that good, even if your quantity of the sleep is number of hours is good. So a simple combination that I give them is, at bedtime you do a cup of warm green tea. Any tea will be fine. Chamomile works for you, great, but any green tea is fine. The idea is to do a warm cup. Sometimes milk works for some people, so I give milk to them. For most people it doesn't, so I don't. With that, you have a couple of walnuts, because walnuts have melatonin in them and they help you sleep. So are cashews. So these are foods that help boost naturally melatonin in your body. Along with that, I give them maybe 2 anjeers, you know that. Yeah, so I love to give this combination to everyone, and this can lull you to sleep. So dairy similarly is another food that can lull you to sleep, which is why traditionally it was always said that you have a cup of milk. It's just that today our guts have reached a state where unfortunately most of us cannot handle dairy, but that's not dairy's problem, I keep saying. That's our gut's problem. So a few of these foods at night helps. What you eat for dinner is very important, because a lot of times I'm giving carbs to people for dinner and they're like, this is a change. We've never eaten, we are asked to stop eating carbs for dinner. we're asked to stop having rice for dinner. But the fact is that if you do a combination of carbs and protein for dinner, that's when you'll sleep better. So you need to juggle the diet basis and individual's requirement.
So tell me, everybody's talking about vegan diets, and I find it a little surprising because we've all grown up on milk. Why has lactose suddenly become an enemy? And what exactly is a vegan diet?
So lactose is not really the enemy. So I personally am a dairy proponent. I mean, everyone knows that, even if it's unpopular opinion. It's very easy today to say that go get off dairy and, but I do not like to follow that path. Unless dairy doesn't work for you, I don't think you should give it up. You should keep a small amount of it definitely in your diet. But if it doesn't work for you, you can't. So in our gut, if we do not have enough lactase enzyme, we cannot digest dairy. Simple way to explain what is happening today. So I'm personally lactose intolerant. I can't handle dairy myself, but I can handle curd and I can handle small amounts of, buttermilk and paneer. So I have that. So if your gut cannot handle dairy, there is no way you can have milk. Let's be very clear about that. But most people are not lactose intolerant from birth. Most people. Congenital hota hai, but bahut kam hota hai. If your gut reaches a stage where it can't handle, we've messed it up. So there are ways to improve, like Anjali was saying. We have to work on the gut inflammation. So if this is dairy, it can also happen to other foods, which is why gluten is becoming such a big problem today, because we overdo it. When you have gluten 3 times a day and then a 4th time as a snack, how can your gut handle it? You do bread for breakfast, you do roti for lunch, you do roti for dinner, and you do a samosa or a cake in the evening. So that's 4 times gluten. Your body can handle gluten maybe once a day. This is where we go wrong. We overdo it and then we try to solve the problem. So if enough education is there, we will probably not overdo it. From the beginning, if you keep having wheat, say once a day, I do not think we will reach the stage of gluten intolerance. Similarly with dairy.
So, Anjali, tell me, everybody is now talking functional medicine, but what is the difference between functional medicine and traditional medicine?
So, just like when I said earlier that we go to the root cause of the disease, in traditional medicine, I remember writing just a prescription to a patient and saying bye and, then come back for a follow-up, repeat your meds or whatever. Here, mostly the cause is found and then the cause is treated rather than we treat the disease with medicine, because medication, allopathy medication, personally, I'm quite against. I'm like going retro from being an internal medicine, going back to traditionally no medicine is the way to go, because all allopathy will have side effects. So functional medicine, we don't want to use medications, we want to use botanicals and herbs and lifestyle and basically treat the root cause. So if, let's say, somebody comes to me with PCOD, for example. Now, we all know the root cause is a bad lifestyle. So just change that. There's no other way to treat PCOD, not with oral contraceptive pill, not with a metformin. You have to just remove the offenders. And it's actually the easiest way to handle people and get better treatment outcomes also.
So, diet, the word everybody talks is, I'm on a diet. Now, what do you think really a diet should be? Should diet be that you're eating less, or diet should be a planned meal plan? What do you think a diet should be?
Yeah, so diet, D-I-E-T, has been made into a 4-letter word.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately. But the fact is, diet is not, you'd never go on a diet. Your diet is what you're eating.
Exactly.
I mean, why have we reached from what we are eating? What is your diet? What are you eating? That's a simple explanation or simple answer to this question. But now if you say, what is your diet? People start saying paleo, keto. I mean, really, honestly, this is where the main problem has started. So your diet is what you're eating, not what you're not eating. Elimination is never the answer. The point is that you need to look at your macros and you need to restructure them. Simple. If you've been eating too many carbs, we need to cut them to size, not remove carbs. Similarly, if you're not eating enough protein, we need to increase the amount of protein in your diet and include good fats in every single person's diet. I mean, it's a given. We are not eating good fats at all. So this is, and fiber, of course. Even Anjali would vouch for it. Hardly, Indians, we do not eat enough fiber. Even people who say we are vegetarians, I love to say this always, are usually grainitarians. Roti sabzi is not vegetarian diet. Where is this roti, and if you're eating roti and aloo ki sabzi for 4 times a week, that's not like a vegetarian diet. Now, where are the veggies in the vegetarian diet? So that is why diet is what you're eating, but modified to suit you, not to go for, like there's a new fat diet every day. But when you look at them, they're all, what is that way to explain it? They're like, they all the same pill in a different color or different bottle. That's how usually you say that. So they all, every month you'll have a new fat diet. But like, honestly, leave the experimentations on mice. Even the scientists prefer to experiment on mice first. So when a new fat diet comes, you should decide whether you want to be the mice for it. You want to experiment on your own self to figure out what it's going to do.
So, Anjali, if somebody had to ask you 3 tips to be healthy, happy, and well, what would you say?
I would say eat less. I mean, it's always better. Food should, basically eating less, I don't mean starve. I just mean that don't think of eating every 2 hours, 3 hours. That's stupidity, I think. Second is drink lots of water, because we always hydrated. As human beings, we're always hydrated. We never pee enough. And I'm not talking about people who have congestive heart failure. Third happiness would be think positive. I mean, it doesn't cost anything. It's just so easy. And I will not take the name of my counselor, I've been going to for a while. And she taught me, she said, it doesn't cost a penny to get up and think, oh, what am I going to choose today? Really. I mean, that's the easiest thing, and anybody can do it. I want to think I'm living in Taj Mahal, I will live in Taj Mahal, big deal. Like, you have to think good things, nice things there, that's all.
So, what are your 3 tips?
Okay, so one, most definitely think nutrition, not calories. Calories is a very vague science. It is an approximate science. I never tire of saying that. This calorie deficit is, it's great, it's important to do it, but focus more on nutrition. I mean, honestly, I believe in adding more nutrients to your diet rather than removing more calories from your diet, because the moment you start doing that, literally calories take care of themselves. That's the first tip that I'd like to give. The second tip is, instead of trying to remove foods from your diet, add good foods to your diet. For example, if you know that in the evening you always, at 4 o'clock, get a craving to eat something salty, and you end up eating something wrong at that point of time, that you make sure that you plan for a healthy snack at that time, which is salty and which is crunchy, but healthier option. Similarly, at 11, fit in a fruit, so that you do not eat something wrong at that point of time. So add foods instead of removing foods, because the good foods always crowd out the bad. I believe in that. It's a very simple way of doing it, but it's very, very effective. Third, always eat mindfully. So the traditional eating diet that we were talking about always had this community eating concept. So when you sit down with people and eat, and you look at the food and eat, it works better for you. Now science also tells us that the body absorbs more nutrients from it when you enjoy the food and you eat it in a good frame of mind. So bringing that traditional community eating concept back to the way we look at food and the way we eat food, I think is very, very important, because that alone, I feel, will take care of a lot of the problems that we are facing today.
So, it's obvious we are what we eat. If anybody has any questions for these beautiful ladies, yeah, I can see there's lots of them.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing such a informative insight. And my question is, it's very confusing with so much of information these days on Google, everywhere. I am confused personally when it comes to dairy products. Like Kavita, you just mentioned that milk, you advise milk. But I'm confused because of the bacteria and all that stuff in dairy products. How far is this information true not to consume dairy products? My question is, yeah, for you, Kavita.
Okay, okay. So there is a problem with dairy because there is a problem with everything. There's a problem with the air we breathe also. That doesn't mean we stop breathing. So the point is that we need to source dairy right because those are all bona fide problems that you're talking about: antibiotics, hormones, the way the cows are, kept. So that kind of milk is definitely going to harm us and lead to more inflammation in the body and a couple more other problems. But the solution here is trying to source it right. There are ways. Sorry? So you need to be clear as to where you're buying your milk from. You need to buy it from a dairy where you are sure the cows are taken. It's a tall order. I'm not saying it's easy, but nothing is easy, So you have to make sure you buy from a dairy where the cows are taken good care of. Ideally, it should be A2 milk, But I personally feel the first rule should be that the cows are better taken care of. Second is if it can be A2 milk. And third is there is no adulteration if you can be sure of that.
How about these skim milk, Nestle and Slim Milk and those
So I
those
would
kind of
personally
milk?
say that for dairy, it's best to go for local dairies where you can be sure of the kind of milk that you're getting. That's my answer, which is
Yeah, good afternoon. Uh, so I want to ask you only. I mean, I eat my meals by about 8, and I believe in the typical Indian traditional diet. So it is one roti, dal, sabzi, and I have a cup of hot milk at night, which you said, but I still don't get good sleep. So what should I do?
you don't manage to go to sleep. You don't get to sleep.
And one more question, yeah. Nowadays, there's a lot of this thing about A2 milk. So what's the difference between A2 and we buy like Mother Dairy or Amul? We never buy from those local, So I think our milk is quite okay. So that's what I want to know.
So those packaged milks are all mostly A1. So A2 milk is a different protein, which is, so A2 milk is from the local guy, जो हमारा traditional क्या बोलते हैं, not traditional,
हाँ जो हमारी
Indian breeds जो हैं.
गिर या साहिवाल का
नहीं दूध वाला भैया.
No, but again दूध वाला भैया के पास भी वो दूसरी गाय हो सकती हैं आजकल. A lot of
गाय के
people
ऊपर डिपेंड करता है A2 कौन सा है.
हाँ, so it's the breed.
अभी
It's not
branded-
दूध वाला भैया का breed, but the गाय
अभी
का breed.
A2 branded भी मिल रहा है markets में.
Yeah, you get so many of them are there. So A2 is definitely better. It causes much less inflammation. So if there's one change I tell people, if you want to make it, so not one actually, I tell them to make a lot of changes. I like to them to change their attas also. And milk, of course, I prefer that people move to A2 for sure. That is one.
Is the taste okay?
Yeah, it's the same.
Because I love milk actually.
I used to love milk as well. I mean, it's a
Okay, what
dupti
about,
rag.
how about going to sleep in spite
Yeah,
of
so
doing all these
that is an important question also. So if sleep, like I mentioned right in the beginning, sleep, it's not just food alone which can be the cause. There could be a lot of other things which could be leading to insomnia or sleeplessness. So you need to probably in your case, the solution is unwinding, blue light, stuff like that. You need to start working on that. And maybe also include, you have to look at a lot of things, like caffeine is another problem. You need to figure out. A lot of people are very caffeine sensitive. I know someone who, even if that person has caffeine at 12, the normal advice we give is कि 4 बजे के बाद मत पीना. But that person, if he has caffeine even at 12, so then you need to probably work on that a little. The
decaf try करो थोड़ा.
decaf, yeah. There is a solution for everything.
Yeah, like they all said, it's everything is individual, so it can't be one size fits all, I guess. So you need to consult the right people. Okay, so I think we've had
One more
we can
question.
go on.
There's
Okay,
one more question I have.
last question.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kavita, for all the insight about the diet. And I have one question. We were discussing about the dinner. You said dinner, we have to be really mindful. So my question is what we should be taking in the dinner. Like, for example, you said carbohydrates should be avoided. And
I said
No,
you need
she
to have
said
it.
she
reduce the carbohydrates and proteins we are supposed to take.
No. So I'll tell you what. I think you're mixing two of my answers.
Yeah,
I,
I was a bit
in one of the
confused.
answers, I said that we eat too much of carbs, so we need to cut it down.
Okay.
But in the other answer, I said there are some people who need carbs for dinner.
All right.
There are some I don't give carbs, for dinner.
Okay.
But there are some who need carbs because their gut and their sleep situation demands carbs for dinner. So dinner, 3 rules. Very simple. First, eat 3 hours before you go to sleep. Non-negotiable. So if you sleep at 11, calculate accordingly. If you sleep at 10, calculate accordingly, right? Ideally, you should sleep by 12. That again should be it's not negotiable.
You're giving us till 12, huh? Most people say 10.
I sleep by 9:30. So but worst case scenario, 12. Yeah. Then the first rule is that 3 hours. Second rule is that you eat foods that is easily digestible for you. What your body is able to digest. You don't want to eat something that your body keeps you awake, trying to digest. So maybe for you, ma'am, roti for dinner might not be a great idea because your body probably takes longer to digest and not let you sleep.
Right.
I'm answering her as well. So that is the second rule, easily digestible food. And third, including at least one protein and one sleeper food towards the second half of the day. Could be at dinner, could be evening, could be bedtime.
So you mean protein is okay in the late evening?
Yeah, protein, most people are able to handle.
I think the way what she said was that it's not about protein or carbs, it's about what works for your body.
Your body.
Right. Got it. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.